Hello everyone. So, I finally got round to watching 28 Years Later, and I just want to give my thoughts on it, largely because the film does feel like it's been quite polarising. Like, I've seen a lot of people who like it, and a lot of people who really didn't like it. So yeah, I just want to give my opinion, and yeah. So in terms of the format, I'm just going to go over the premise of the film first, trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, and then we'll look at the good, the bad, and rate it out of 10. So like I say, let's start with the premise. And I do promise, like, everything I'm saying gets set up incredibly early on in the film, so I'm really not ruining it. So the film essentially focuses on a community living on an island just off of the mainland of the UK. It's a place where the infected can't get to, so, who live on the mainland. So in many ways, it's basically like a safe haven. There's a child who lives on the island who's called Spike. And basically his mother she's very sick with an illness that no one really knows. No one on the island entirely knows what's wrong with her. There aren't any doctors or anything, so they're not really able to find out. However, Spike basically finds out that there is potentially a man who used to be a doctor who lives on the mainland. And the film basically revolves around him going out onto the mainland with his mother in order that they can kind of like find this man so they might be able to, cure her. So as you can tell, considering this film took, over 20 years to come out, I mean, not quite 28 years, but not far off really, it is quite a small story in many ways. Like, it is quite intimate almost. And I do think that is one of the reasons a lot of people may not have been that keen on this film. One of the reasons. I think there are others as well. However, just going into the good elements of the film, I personally don't mind this too much, and it's for two main reasons. Firstly, I do think it emphasises some of the other things that these people are having to deal with. Yes, you've got the Walking Dead running around, and yes, that's obviously a big issue, and it's going to cause a lot of trauma and heartbreak when you see people die. But you've also got everyday issues as well, the same things that you and I have to deal with. And so I do think it's good at just emphasising that these people have a bit of a double whammy of potential heartbreak and trauma. And I think that's quite an interesting approach, actually. The second reason I don't mind it is because this is actually supposed to be the first of a trilogy. And so, yes, fair enough, this particular story is a bit smaller, but it's quite clearly been set out in a way where it's going to grow over the next couple of films. Like, it will get grander with time. So yeah, it's a story that does need to be justified by the next two films, but at this stage, I personally don't mind it at all. I will also say that when it comes to the island, again, I quite liked the concept of it. I quite like that the people on the island all felt quite three-dimensional. Like, there's one or two of them that felt like they could be your granddad, for instance. They got their good side, they got their bad side. It feels like they got their own backstories. I'll be honest, I kind of almost would like a little mini-series where we could see some of their lives and just follow them around. But yeah, I think that's kind of good because it's something that we can, again, build on with the coming films. However, what's really interesting as well is overarching all of these people, the actual society itself feels quite kind of like cult-like. It's got a definite cult vibe to it. And again, it does make you wonder if maybe there's a few dark secrets underneath the surface, things that will presumably come out in the next couple of films. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Further, I kind of like the vibe of the film. Like, this mainly comes down to two main things. I thought the use of music and flashback scenes, weirdly, was really effective. So every time there's coming danger, like say you've gone out onto the mainland, you're walking through the woods, and it's very likely that zombies are there, the music slowly gets louder and louder at a kind of like consistent rate. But while this is happening, you get these flashbacks, both to earlier on in the film, but also just earlier on in that world, but also just like film clips as well. Like, for instance, you might just get a clip of Monty Python where someone's shooting a bow and arrow, and then it goes to the present day where someone's about to shoot an arrow at, like, the undead, for instance. And I just thought that was really effective because, first of all, it did help to build the tension. It really did. But it also kind of made the whole thing feel quite surreal and not quite real. Like, you never entirely knew what was actually happening and what was just a flashback. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very Danny Boyle, I suppose, and I mean that as a compliment. Finally, again, I've sort of already covered this a little bit, but I will just emphasise that I did like the characters here. I think it is fair to say that I think there are probably people out there who would want to know a little bit more about these characters. But again, in many ways, considering this is supposed to be a trilogy, that's kind of a good thing. You know, like, ultimately, you want to end the first film of a trilogy wanting to know more about the characters. This is something that we can get in the next two films. So yeah, I understand why people are a bit disappointed by not getting to know as much about them, but by the same token, I don't think it's a huge issue. It will come with time. However, now let's move on to some of the bad elements. First things first, Spike, the main character, so the child I was talking about earlier, he's a frustrating character because, quite frankly, he makes some stupid decisions. And I'm not going to say what they are because it will ruin, like, that will be a spoiler. But some of the decisions he makes in this film are just baffling and they're stupid, and it was quite annoying, actually. But what was even more annoying is the insane amount of plot armor he had. And I think that was my biggest issue with the film, actually. Like, it felt like every single time he was in a life or death situation, someone just came along and saved him. And this happened the first couple of times. I was like, okay, that's a bit weird, but fine. But then it just kept happening. And by the end, it just meant that all that tension that was built up earlier, through the music and the flashback scenes, I just wasn't feeling it for a large part of the middle of this film because, well, why would I? He was always going to get saved. I'll be honest, I do like Danny Boyle. I think he's really good, but I can't help but this just was very unimaginative, like unusually unimaginative, I thought. And it's a shame because, I don't know, there just must have been a better way of doing this, to be quite frank. The final point I want to say in terms of the negative, I suppose in many ways it's a bit of a contradiction to what I said earlier, is I would actually have liked to have known more about these characters. I would have liked to have known more about this world. And the reason I want to explain why that isn't a contradiction is because, yes, I think it's good that we want to see more of these people after this film has ended, but that doesn't stop the fact that they haven't quite got the levels right. It would have been good just to get a little bit more information, especially considering how big this world is. Like, there's so much they could include here. There's so much imagination that can go into it. So yeah, maybe they could have just given us a tiny bit more. I will also say, just quickly as well, the film did come off as a bit slow occasionally. But again, I think that comes down to what I was saying earlier about the plot armor, because that tension wasn't always there in the middle part of the film. I wouldn't say it dragged, but it was quite close to dragging at points. So overall, did I like or dislike this film? I'll just caveat first of all by saying I completely understand why people didn't like this film. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting. It definitely wasn't as grand as I was expecting, and it definitely was a lot slower than I was expecting. So yeah, I 100% get why you wouldn't like this. But personally, I did. I thought this was a really good start for a trilogy to come. Does it need to be justified by the next two films? Yeah, probably. I think I would still enjoy it even if the other two films were bad. But it would definitely put a damper on it, no doubt. But regardless, while I was sitting in the cinema watching this, did I think it was perfect? By no means, no, it wasn't. But was I enjoying it? Yeah, I was. So, overall, I'm going to give 28 Years Later an 8 out of 10. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this little review. Please do leave comments below if you want. Even if you disagree with me, please, like I said, I completely understand it if you didn't like this film. I'd love to know what you think of it, actually. Also, please do like the video, subscribe. I'd really appreciate that, actually. I hope you all have an excellent rest of your week, and see you next time.